spaces here if you want to see that room. Yeah. So we're going to have a bit of an exploration tonight, following some of the things that we have already introduced. So trying to go a bit deeper with some of those things as well. But to begin with, we'll pay our respects to the three jewels represented in the shrine. So we'll do that in call and response. Namo Buddhaya. Namo Dharmaya. Namo Sanghaya. Namo Namah. Home. Right. So it's very hot still in the UK. And sweating quite a bit. I don't think it's because of the weather. I think it's just because I'm a bit nervous tonight. But yeah, I think something very important that we're going to be exploring with the topic tonight is our bodies, our experience in the body. Yeah. So I just want to invite you, before we go into the meditation, it's going to be a very short meditation, but I just want to invite you to try and see if you can just tune in with what is happening in your body right now. Yeah. So a very simple way of doing that is just, if you just take a couple of moments just to recognize around you what is happening. Yeah. So the person center sitting to your side, either side of where you are now, the room, the ceiling, the floor. Yeah. And maybe just try to look around. Same for you connecting online. If you are in wherever you are, just try to look around in your room in both directions and just recognizing an object in particular. Maybe just using that object as an anchor. Take some time just to feel whatever sensations are arising right now in your experience. Maybe noticing the quality of your breath. How tired are you? How curious are you feeling right now? Or how bored are you feeling at the moment? Whatever is happening, just noticing, just taking some time to recognize. Noticing sounds in the room or silence in the room. Just allowing yourself to be with whatever is emerging in your experience, whatever emotions. No need to suppress what is happening, no need to change it, no need to push it in any direction in particular. And something that we do here, hello Jack, welcome. There are some spaces here, Jack, if you want to sit. So share there. Something that we do at the beginning of these Sangha nights, I believe we have at least one person for first time tonight, our Sangha night. So something that we do at the beginning of these Sangha nights is just chanting together. It's a very good way of tuning in with our environment. Yeah? So creating a sense of interconnectedness with the people around us. So I invite you as well at home, if you want to chant alongside. Maybe we mute the speaker, Zach. And then, yeah, we'll try to get into a rhythm here in the room. And what we're going to be doing, the practice that we are going to be leading, or I'm going to be leading in a moment, is that of the Metta Bhavana. Yeah? And there is a particular figure, particular Buddha, it's a red Buddha, that is a symbol of meditation, and particularly a symbol of love, of that kind of love that metta is an aspiration of. So I think a good way of beginning the evening tonight will be chanting that mantra, the mantra of Amitabha. I wonder if Kemasiro Kusaladevi will be happy to lead us into the mantra of Amitabha. Who? Okay, Kusaladevi. Yeah, thank you. Om Ami Deva Hri. So we're now going to do a short period of meditation. The metta bhavana, or cultivation of loving kindness. It's very important that we just allow our experience to be. Maybe just experiencing the effects of your chanting that mantra, or listening to it. Opening our hearts and minds to the practice of the metta bhavana. And to begin with, just tuning more deeply in what is happening right now for us. Being with that sense of tenderness, vulnerability, feeling, experiencing more deeply other impulses, alertness, tension, stress. Staying with our experience with an increasing sense of appreciation, of gentle awareness. opening our hearts and minds even further to evoke the presence of a good friend. This person is a source of support, guidance, companionship in our lives. Acknowledging how much we benefit from being in relationship, in contact with this person. Bringing to mind and heart a familiar face, the neutral person. It might be somebody that we just met, somebody whom we see regularly, but we don't know much about them. May this person be well. May this person be happy, truly happy. May this person be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. May this person make progress on the path to wisdom. expanding that sense of gentle awareness, of appreciation, to include a person that we find difficult. And to begin with, just notice the intensity of your emotions, your feelings, when you think of this person. Not censoring yourselves, just noticing what kind of emotion you experience when you think of this person. Feeling hurt, let down, betrayed, disappointed, sad, angry, upset. Are there reasons for you to feel this way towards this person? Is there a why? Noticing what emerges. And then see if you can look beyond that experience, those emotions and feelings, those reasons. Seeing this person more fully as another human being, just like you, with hopes, desires, perhaps searching for meaning and happiness, just like you. With people in their lives that love them, that care for them, just like you. And see if you can go a step further, wishing this person well, wishing this person happiness, real happiness. Wishing them to be free from suffering and the causes of suffering. Wishing them to attain to wisdom. And finally, bringing to mind the whole of our experience, a deeper connection with ourselves, with our friend, with a neutral person, the person that we find difficult. Feeling that sense of connection with others, meditating with us right now, here in Nottingham, in the Nottingham Buddhist Center Shrine Room, connecting online with us from many different parts of the world, from the United States, from India, from Canada. This precious moment in time that we share with others, with a real sense of interconnectedness. I came into this world with a body, a beautiful body capable of a vast range of expression, from intense hatred to great acts of generosity. I came into this world with a body that could be shaped, restricted, and limited in its expression. I, along with many others, have been on a journey to regain access to my body. This journey has entailed navigating through what were once immovable blocks and expressing more of what my body is capable of. The more I journey, the more I express. And the more I express, the more I really live. At your own time, bringing the meditation to a closure. We're going to have a break now. So I want to say again, welcome to those of you connecting from elsewhere than Nottingham. Especially, I want to say thank you very much. I'm very, very moved to see Chandramalin, Guhyasaki, Rias, Joanna, Elizabeth connected. So they are part of my affinity group on Sunday nights. We've been doing this in the last 2 months. We've been looking at this book that we are going to be looking at it tonight, The Race Conversation by Eugene Ellis. And I see many people from that context, especially almost my whole affinity group. Thank you, Saravante. Saravante is applauding, I suppose. That's what you do? Yes. So what we're going to do tonight, I'm going to introduce some concepts. I'm going to do a bit of a recap of what we did last time, but I'm going to introduce a couple of concepts tonight. And I want to invite you this evening to do something similar to what we've been doing on the Sunday nights, which is gathering in affinity groups. Yeah? So racial affinity groups tonight. I think it's going to work well with the people that we have in the shrine room, and probably it's going to work well as well with the people that we have online. So just as in the spirit of recapping a bit, last time that we gathered to look at this topic, we were reflecting about, first of all, of the impact that the death of George Floyd had on us a couple of years ago, and how that trigger, it was a bit of a catalyst for us to respond in different ways to the whole issue of the race construct or the conversation around race. So here in Nottingham, we have created a little support group. Well, it's not that little any longer, but it's a very vibrant part of our Sangha. And we've been gradually creating conditions for us to have more and more of a look and how we are conditioned by race, both individually and collectively. So some of the concepts that we looked at last time were this area of intersectionality. So we are conditioned in very different ways. So we are conditioned not just by race, by gender, by sexuality, class, ethnicity, caste, disability, weight, physical appearance, height. So many characteristics. Oh, Karunavacha, welcome. Very good to see you, sister. And that sense of, that our experience is complex because of the way we are conditioned. And it might be even that some of our conditioning is evolving, is unfolding. So it's not fixed. Also, we look at this area of the window of stress tolerance. So that idea of safety, that is very important. And I'm going to talk a bit more about safety tonight, but also in the area of what we're trying to do, as people exploring a spiritual path or a spiritual journey, what we're trying to do in order to grow and develop. That we need certain level of challenge in our experience in order to be able to grow and develop. But that challenge needs to be in a way within this window of stress tolerance. It cannot be overwhelming. And I'm going to say a bit more about that in a moment as well. And then we look at the hierarchy of race, particularly around language, and how we can, especially when, I'm not English by birth. I'm a British citizen now, but I was born in Venezuela and my mother tongue is Spanish. So for me, language is a very sensitive area, but also, we were looking at that from within the English-speaking world, parting from the example that Eugene gives in the book. And how language, in a way, determines our experience, or our access to certain ways of articulating our experience, accessing concepts, being able to comprehend concepts. So that's on a way of a recap. I think it was a very positive evening. We managed to have a very productive conversation. And that's the spirit of these evenings. The experience is that we are going to enter into dialogue. In that evening, we didn't do affinity groups, just to say. We do is where we gather, with the different people that were in the room. I would like to encourage us to do the affinity groups experience tonight and see how it works. It's not necessarily, I hope we can carry on doing these evenings. And looking at Kusala Devi is nodding. Kusala Devi and me, at the end of that last evening, we say, okay, this is just the beginning of the conversation, really. And in a way, it's important that we create the spaces where we can talk about this area. But it's going to be probably very experimental every night than when we do it. It will be something different every night. Something that I want to say about this book, I'm going to focus tonight on two books, actually, not just The Race Conversation by Eugene Ellis, but also I'm going to use some ideas from a book called The 4 Stages of Psychological Safety by an American writer, Timothy R. Clark. He's a white man, so Eugene Ellis is a black man. Timothy is a white man. And I'm going to say a bit more about Timothy in a moment. But the race conversation, the book that we are mostly basing these evenings on, is a book written by a therapist. So he's coming from the angle of looking at the whole race conversation as or through the lenses of trauma. Yeah. And that what I was mentioning before about the stress, the window of stress tolerance, yeah, has a lot to do with trauma, how we deal with trauma in our lives. Yeah? I actually really like the way Eugene defines trauma in this chapter. So this is chapter 2 of the book. So he says, trauma is actually any stressful event that is prolonged, overwhelming, and unpredictable. Yeah. It's a very interesting way of looking at trauma. Yeah? So it's not necessarily a particular event that happened in a phase in our lives, though that's trauma, obviously. You know, some people deal with that for many years in their lives. But we are looking at something that we've been exposed, a condition that we've been exposed for a prolonged period of time, probably. Yeah? And it's unpredictable. In a way, it's out of our control. Yeah? And can be overwhelming. So it's different to the window of stress tolerance because it's overwhelming. Yeah. So it takes over our capacity to deal with it. Yeah. Something very important that we mentioned in the last meeting also was this area of how conditioned we are by the people that preceded us. Yeah? So our parents, you know, previous generations. And this is another concept that is explored very beautifully in the book around intergenerational trauma. Yeah. When I say very beautifully, it's not that it's not difficult, yeah, to face. There's a very deep analysis that Eugene makes of slavery, for example, yeah, over the centuries, and the whole financial justification, you know, for racism within that idea of a particular economical system where slavery, you know, was playing a part. But in the sense of also connecting with our roots, yeah, connecting with our ancestors, yeah, and acknowledging how difficult it was for them, yeah, probably life in general. Yeah. So something very important that Eugene talks is about this area of being trauma-informed. Yeah. So being trauma-informed in ourselves and in others. And an area that Eugene specializes in is working with adopted children. Yeah. So there's a whole analysis in the book about the impact that it has on a child moving into a new home and establishing that connection with the new parents, and also for the carers, you know, to establish that connection with the child. But it's interesting how that can be interpreted as well as in a way our human situation. Yeah, how we can be exposed to similar challenges, you know, of feeling probably unsafe in situations that might not be as such for other people. Yeah. So these are the two concepts that I want to mention tonight from the book. And it's, in a way, is what I want to invite you is to look a bit more deeply at our own conditioning individually. Yeah. So the first concept is called implicit memories. Yeah. So there's a distinction in between what we can recollect by verbalizing or using our conscious mind. So these are memories that can be recalled and spoken about, and give us the opportunity to bring meaning to our experience. Yeah. But implicit memories are different. Yeah. Implicit memories are memories that are unconscious. They can be remembered or verbalized because of the way that they are encoded in the brain. Yeah. Implicit memory works in such a way that people can remember things that they were previously only aware of, subliminally, which then primes their choices. Implicit memory also stores skills, habits, and automatic behaviors. These behaviors, however, are disassociated from content and context. Yeah. So what we're talking about here is all those things that we are not necessarily aware of. Yeah. So in a way, we operate at a very superficial level of our experience. Yeah. Our conscious mind can just hold a certain amount of information. Yeah. But our unconscious mind is much more complex. Yeah. We are receiving quite a lot. And we usually are receiving quite a lot through the body first. Yeah. So an important point here to remember is that we have opinions, we have views, yeah, we have preferences. And those preferences, even if we think that they are very rational, are usually based, supported by emotions. Yeah. Though those emotions might not be very clear to ourselves. Yeah. So it might be that somebody says something to us and we react in a way that is strange even to ourselves. Yeah? We cannot quite understand the intensity of our feelings to the objective situation of what has happened. Yeah? So we might be susceptible of being triggered in a particular way because of that level of conditioning, that is much more deeper. Yeah? And the other concept coming from this chapter is that of neuroception. Yeah. So this is a bit more complex. But neuroception is basically is a concept from neurobiology, and is the ability of our nervous systems to detect unintentional or unconscious behavioral cues of safety, danger, or life threat in others and the environment, without our having any awareness that this might be happening. Yeah? So this is very closely connected with the survival mechanisms in us. Yeah? So Eugene continues, from an evolutionary point of view, this makes perfect sense. The last thing you want to do to escape a perceived threat is to start thinking about it. Yeah? So this mechanism allows us to react, to respond, without necessarily engaging our intellectual or conscious abilities, yeah, capacities. But that's working all the time. Yeah? So when we come into, for example, into a room full of people, we are reading those cues, yeah? Those subliminal cues. So how we feel safe or not. Yeah? What are the places that we tend to be more drawn towards? Yeah? The people that we tend to be more drawn towards. Yeah? So this is very important because in a way what we're trying to do here is to understand ourselves a bit better. Yeah? And hopefully with that, we can go a bit deeper, with what the Buddha is proposing. So the meditation that we were doing earlier on, that of the Metta Bhavana, is a meditation about love. Yeah? So how can we become better at loving others? Yeah? How can we can become better at loving ourselves? Yeah? So in a way, we need to go deeper in the process of understanding better our conditioning, understanding better ourselves, and that the more that we do that, the freer we become of those elements that might be stopping us from being creative, from being light, from being responsive, to others, and those patterns where we are much more reactive, yeah? Where we feel sometimes probably trapped in particular ways of responding. Yeah? We might feel sometimes even impatient with ourselves, yeah? Because we keep doing the same things, we keep doing the same mistakes. How are we doing? Is that good in the room? Yeah, online, people online, good, great, okay. So I want to bring a couple of ideas from this other book from Timothy R. Clark, who is a white man, as I said before, and it's interesting with him because he lived as a child. He lived with the Navajo people in America. Yeah. So he talks in his book about being exposed from very early on, to in a way sort of an alternative mode of relating. Yeah. But he uses a concept that I thought goes very well with the exploration that I want to do tonight, which is that of inclusion safety. So again, this idea of feeling safe, spaces where we can feel safe, and is very relevant to this exploration that we are doing here in Nottingham, at least, and in Triratna in general, around diversity. Yeah. So he starts saying that diversity is a fact, inclusion is a choice. Yeah. So diversity, you just need to walk in a city, and we notice diversity in terms of gender, diversity in terms of gender identity, in terms of sexuality, in terms of age, in terms of ethnicity, race. Yeah. And I really like what he's saying here because it's something that points towards what we are trying to do with the metabhavana. Yeah. So he says inclusion safety is in the purest sense nothing more than a species-based acceptance. Yeah. So we accept somebody just by the fact that they are human beings. Yeah. He makes a very, very beautiful distinction between worth and worthiness. Yeah. So accepting people just by their worth, yeah, just by the fact that they are alive, and not by their worthiness in terms of what they have done to deserve a particular treatment. Yeah. He says a few things about inclusion safety, so I'm just going to read what I have in my notes. Inclusion safety isn't earned but owed. Yeah. So in a way, the idea of inclusion is not something that we need to achieve, we need to gain. In a way, what we are trying to do is to create spaces. That's our commitment here at the Nottingham Buddhist Center, for example, that we're trying to tackle, we're trying to work with those systemic conditions that get on the way of being more inclusive. Yeah. Inclusion safety offers the basic assurance that you matter. Yeah? So after the death of George Floyd, the killing of George Floyd, we have the Black Lives Matter movement. Yeah? But this area of inclusion is sort of a very, again, in the experience of the metabhavana, is affirming life. Yeah? It's affirming you as an individual and your place. Inclusion safety, once built, is fragile, delicate, and impermanent. So, and this is what it's very interesting for me, this area, because we are striving for inclusivity, but it's something that we need constantly to be nourishing. Yeah? In a way, it's like the spiritual community. Probably when you come to the center, you feel, you feel in a very positive environment, very, very supported by what is offered here. But it's very fragile as well. Yeah, we need to recognize that as well. So if one condition changes, it might affect very seriously, what the rest is happening. I live in a community upstairs with Zach and two other men. And it's something that I constantly bring, to our meetings. A sense of community living together is a very, it needs constant nourishment. You cannot take it for granted. And it's very easy to take it for granted. Yeah? It's very easy to take for granted sometimes positive conditions around us. Yeah? And here he plays with this idea of worth and worthiness. Yeah? So you know that you are really included in something, or an environment is really inclusive when you are still part of that environment, even if you are not, your sense of worthiness has changed. So he gives an example, for example, of an American football team, and at some point not performing as well, and how the relationship with his teammates change from that moment. Yeah. So when somebody doesn't play the same role, it's not as useful as it used to be. Yeah. How quickly that person stops being part of the group. Yeah. And so their membership of the group was in relation to their worthiness rather than their worth. Yeah. And obviously, when we're talking about inclusivity, we need to realize those differences that we were talking, well, I mentioned before with that area of intersectionality. Yeah? So we don't need to be experts of those differences. Yeah? For example, cultural differences. I can give my own example of, I've been in the UK for almost 15 years. So I have learned the language in being able, to be able to communicate with native English speakers. I have made an effort to understand the culture. Yeah, I have acquired some elements of the culture as well, that I really enjoy. But I'm an immigrant, yeah, so I have come here and I needed to do that job. For somebody who is not, necessarily striving in the same way that I am, so you don't need to necessarily learn Spanish, or the history of Venezuela, yeah, in order to establish a meaningful relationship with me, yeah, because I have done that effort. But there is a level of empathy that we need to cultivate, yeah? So that we are aware of those cultural differences, or in this case, tonight we are talking about racial differences. Yeah? So that conditioning that is based on race. Yeah? And maybe not just being empathic and sensitive, but also the capacity to appreciate them. Yeah. And I want to quote now Sangarachita, and something very beautiful that he says when he's exploring this whole area of the basis. What is that is needed for metta, yeah, for this loving kindness, this universal love to emerge? So he talks of knowledge or information is important. Yeah? So that knowing, that understanding. Yeah? From that knowing, understanding emerges. From that understanding, sympathy emerges, or empathy emerges. And from empathy, love, yeah? Metta. So one of the things that Sangarachita reflected on was how divided is our experience of others, yeah? Or how divided is portrayed, at least, through the media, through the ways that we access information. So we need to strive for finding information rather than propaganda, in our lives. Yeah, this author, Timothy Clark, talks about the faster and deeper you get to know each other, the more effectively you can work together. So his work is directed to teams, working in teams. The more contact and context tend to create more empathy. Yeah. But obviously, when we are with others, not necessarily, all the interactions are not necessarily harmonious and pleasant. There might be some unpleasant relationships or interactions that happen. Yeah? I just want to read something from Sangarachita as well. It's a quote that I keep reflecting on, because it's important to acknowledge as well those emotions that are very strong and overwhelming. Yeah? Surprisingly enough, says Sagarachita, the greatest hatred often occurs between people who are supposedly very close to one another, between children and parents, between husband and wife, between people of the same religious tradition, and even between members of the same spiritual community. But these are the very people from whom we normally receive the most, emotionally speaking, and from whom we therefore expect the most. Bitter disappointment is thus more than likely. So again, we are talking about love here, that sense of safety, that sense of security. So our dilemma, I suppose, as human beings, is that we need very strongly to belong. We need to belong. We need to be part of a family. We need to be part of a community. We need to be part of groups in order to bring a sense of meaning or purpose even to our lives. But that belonging is not necessarily free from all these difficulties. We might experience emotions as strong as hatred. And what we're trying to do with this practice of the metta bhavana, or this committing to a spiritual journey, is to transform that energy. So we don't gain anything from negating hatred. If hatred is there, we need to acknowledge it. And then how we can, that's probably is an individual task, how you can transform your hatred into love, ideally, into a skillfulness, into creativity. How can you learn not to be knocked down by hatred when it happens, by feeling despondent or feeling defeated when it happens. Just going to read a couple of quotes before I say something more about love. The irony is that because of our insecurity, we refuse to validate each other, which is the very thing that heals the insecurity. That unmet need expresses itself in jealousy, resentment, and contempt. Excluding a person is more often the result of personal unmet needs and insecurities than a genuine dislike of the person. How many times have you been suspicious or critical of someone you really didn't know? And when you got to know that person, your entire attitude probably changed. Differences tend to repel us initially, but when we suspend judgment, we can bridge those differences. So that's very important, that exercise that we did during the meditation of, first of all, acknowledging the energy that is there, whatever it is, the feeling, the emotion that we are experiencing. And then being able, without suppressing that, being able to bridge, to reach out, to look beyond to the other person. If we dehumanize each other, we give ourselves permission to hate and harm each other. And then he says something very beautiful, which is behave until you believe. So how can we become better at metta and loving? Well, by acting in a loving way, even if we are not fully convinced. As you love people with action, you come to love them with emotion. So what I would say is, maybe something to reflect here is how often we reach out to those who are different to us. How often we go and ask somebody who is from a different background, from a different ethnicity, from a different gender, from a different nationality, cultural conditioning. How often we try to do that. And how much of our experience is, we are surrounded by people like us, with similar conditioning, similar backgrounds, similar race, etc. So I want to invite you now to go into groups, and this is the area that I want to explore, or I like you to explore in the groups. So reflecting about the practice of the metta bhavana. We are going to do that in racial affinity groups. So the way I want us to try to explore this is looking at, especially with these two categories of the friend and the difficult person. If you can think of the people that you tend to put in those categories. So who are they? How they look? How closely to you they are in terms of their conditioning, especially ethnicity and race. And also, if you can go a bit deeper and ask yourself why. Why you tend to choose that people when you practice a metta bhavana. I was thinking of doing two groups tonight, but I think better than doing that, so we can have enough time in our groups to look into this. We are going to just have a very long period to discuss things. And if you feel that you have exhausted that topic, bring a bit more the whole topic of race then. And a good way of engaging with that, it might be a bit triggering, but I'm going to take the risk, is thinking or reflecting of, do you consider yourself racist or anti-racist? Okay. Thank you, Shantika. Yeah, I hope we have a couple of minutes before we say goodbye, before we bring the evening to an end. We have a very interesting conversation here. We were seven in our group, our affinity group. But I wonder if anybody wants to share either online or here in the room. How was the experience? Good. Yeah. Anybody online?
Is that an invitation to say something, Aryavacin?
Was that, sorry, again?
Is it okay to say something?
Yes, please, yes.
So we had a great conversation. Thank you for the opportunity. And one thing that came up towards the end was where we noticed kind of elements in ourselves from a racist culture that we're in, bubbling up, a racist thought, and that kind of meets the bit of us that is consciously wanting to be anti-racist, to undo racism. And we just had a sense of these bits bumping into each other in our psyches. So we had the phrase of things that go bump in the metta bhavana, in these different bits of ourselves bump up against and kind of go, oh, I didn't know you were there in my unconscious, and into the kind of integration work.
Yeah. Thank you, Saravanto. Yeah. Something that we were talking in our affinity group, people of color affinity group, was this, very easily identifying as anti-racist, but also acknowledging that we still discriminate, and we might have some sort of a prejudice as well. So it was a very frank conversation. I really enjoyed that, and being able to talk about that in a kind of a safe space. That was a very important experience as well. Yeah. Anybody else before we say goodbye? Yeah, Zach. You want to use a microphone? Yeah. For the benefit of those online.
Now it is. We got onto quite an interesting topic at the end. Ian was bringing up that he did a survey. Ian was surveying something to do with like lawyers, something to do with like his work, and he was surveying. He was asking why people of color didn't rise up to a certain level within companies. And it kind of got us, it was right at the end actually, so it's a shame we didn't have more time to explore it, but we started to ask the question about what was the dominant what was the dominant sort of shape, and if you didn't fit that shape, then like then there would be barriers in order for you to move freely in the world. So that's kind of where we got, actually. It was right at the end, but that was just something that was something that I'm kind of taking away from it, actually. Though that I think there has been a lot of progression, there is a dominant shape. Yeah.
Thank you, Zach. Yeah. Well, we have come to the end of the time that we have for this exploration. So as I said before, this is an ongoing conversation. So we probably are going to have another one of these in September. But yeah, very, very grateful to all the people that connected online today. Those of you who still remain, Rias, Danadasa, Saravantu, Maitrijit, Amanda, Kuhyasaki, Maitri Sara, Gambirachita, yeah, and our regulars, Tom, Paul Johnson, Emma, Anthony, yeah, Parveen as well, Parveen, I didn't say your name, Joanna as well. Well, all of you, thank you very much for connecting online, and thank you very much for you coming along, yeah, and go well. Thank you.